Did you get it? Did you got the previous recording?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so you can see the slides, and let me just remind you where we were last time, yesterday, and after the break we're going to talk about the project a bit. Okay. Last time we talked about we were doing I was refreshing your memory about what you need to know so far, and we talked about hypothesis testing via test of significance approach. Can somebody remind me, when we say test of significance approach, what do we mean? Test of significance approach, what do we mean? Test of significance approach, what do we mean? It's t-statistic and p-value. Okay. T-statistic and p-value. And confidence interval approach, we construct a confidence interval. Okay. So the probability distribution of the estimators now, you know, our estimate alpha hat would follow the normal distribution with a mean alpha and the variance of alpha, and beta hat would basically do the same. Okay. Now, the test of significance approach, what we need to do in step 1, we need alpha hat, we need beta hat, we need the standard error of beta hat, we need the standard of beta hat, and the test statistic is based on this ratio, where in the denominator we have the estimate beta hat, minus the value of beta under the null hypothesis. Now, a very specific and important case is when beta equals 0. When beta equals 0, the t-statistic is beta hat divided by the standard error of beta hat. Okay. Now, who is going to tell me, who is going to help me why beta hat is an important case? Why beta hat is an important case? Why beta equals 0 is an important case? Why beta equals 0 is an important case?
On this web page, which I have indicated here. So you have in the chat of
why beta equals 0 is an important case. Who is going to help me with that?
Meanwhile,
because it means that the variable, the independent one, is not significant for the dependent variable.
Very good point. Who was talking?
Salvatore.
Salvatore, very good, Salvatore, thank you very much. So when we are testing whether beta equals 0, in fact what we are testing is X cannot help me in explaining Y. One more time, this is important, I'm going to repeat it. What it does, it helps me to answer the question whether X can help me in explaining Y. Whether X can help me in explaining Y. So when I'm testing whether 0 is a value, 0 is a possible value for beta, what I'm testing in fact is whether X can help me in explaining Y. Whether X can help me in explaining Y. Okay. Whether X can help me in explaining Y. So beta equals 0. In fact, I'm asking whether X can help me in explaining
Unibo.it.
why. Okay. So we're going to do this choosing the level of significance, and we have three levels of significance that are important. This is the 5%, the 10%, and the 1%. Now Gretel automatically gives 2 stars when something is significant at the 5%. It gives 1 star when something is significant at the 10%. It gives 3 stars when something is significant at the 1%. Okay, let me remind you here what we did yesterday in Gretel. I'm going to show you later. What we did in Gretel. So in the end of each coefficient, we have the number of stars, and we see whether a coefficient is statistically significant. I'm going to repeat it one more time because this is very important. When a coefficient can take the value of 0, then the variable that is attached to this coefficient does not help me in explaining why. Okay. The variable that is attached to the coefficient does not help me in explaining why. So it is very important to see whether a coefficient can take the value of 0, because in effect I'm testing whether the variable that is attached to this coefficient is important or not. Okay, now we have a rejection and non-rejections area. So here we have 0, and usually we have this is 0, and usually this is 1.96 here, 1.96 here. Okay, so we have the level. This is the case for the normal distribution, and these are the two tails. Okay. Now we can do the same type of test one side if I'm going to see whether something is strictly positive or strictly negative on the other side, and we perform the test. If the test statistic lies in the rejection region, then you reject the null, or you do not reject the null. So you can say reject the null hypothesis, or you can say you do not reject the null hypothesis. Okay. You should be familiar with the normal distribution and the characteristic bell shape of the normal distribution. We usually scale the normal variance to have a 0 mean and unit variance. How do we do that? We subtract the mean and divide by the standard deviation. In fact, we are also using the t-distribution a lot, and there is a specific relationship between the t and the normal. The t and the normal are both symmetric and they are centered around 0, but the t-distribution has another parameter, which is the degrees of freedom. The t-distribution we employed when do we employ the t-distribution? Who is going to help me? When do we employ the t-distribution?
Hello.
To test the significant difference between mean
We are undertaking an evaluation
in case of
course,
small sample.
so you need to go.
When do we employ the t-distribution? When we have many observations, or when we have few observations?
A small sample.
When we have a small sample. That's good. So we usually, when we have a relatively small sample. What does relatively small sample means? We don't know.
Taking an evaluation of the course, so take a
Okay,
picture of the
so what's the difference between the normal and the T? The T, you can see, has fatter tails. Okay, the T has fatter tails. Okay, the T has fatter tails. So one important difference between the T and the normal is the fact that the T has fatter tails. Okay, fatter tails means what? Could somebody help me? What does fatter tails means?
It is less precise.
It is
Less precise because the variance is more.
less precise, that the variance is more. When we say fatter tails, what do we imply?
I think large rejection region.
Yes, but fatter tails means what? Means that
That
extreme
there are
values are
more dispersed.
yes. So somebody wanted to also say something. So fatter tails, what does it mean about extreme values? Fatter tail means that extreme values are more frequent compared to the normal distribution. When we say extreme values, we mean values that are far away from the mean. So fatter tails means extreme values are more frequent
Just to know, did you finish or you are still undertaking?
more frequent than the normal.
Is anyone that is still doing that? You have all finished?
Okay.
Okay.
What does
So
extreme values mean? Extreme values means that, you know, when you have, for example, minus 4 or minus 5 or plus 4 plus 5 is more likely to happen than the normal distribution thinks. It is more likely to happen than the normal distribution thinks. Okay. So extreme the tails, when we say tails, we imply what is happening in the extremes. The tails implies what is happening in the extremes. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. Is this clear?
Okay, so I'm going to close. Oh, 45.
Okay.
One more. Shall I wait another couple
So
of minutes?
the T and the normal, well, the normal has a specific set of critical values. The T distribution does not have a specific set of critical values. The critical values of the T distribution depend on what?
Okay.
The critical values
Degrees of freedom.
It depends on the degrees of freedom. So how many T distributions there are? Infinite number of T distributions. Okay. Each T distribution has different critical values. Why? Because it depends on the degrees of freedom. The degrees of freedom are what? How can we define the degrees of freedom? When we say degrees of freedom, we mean what?
The difference between total observation and the total number of restrictions.
The number of observations, let's call it n, minus the number of coefficients we estimate. So degrees of freedom is the number of observations that we have. So if I have 100 observations and I'm estimating two coefficients, my degrees of freedom are going to be 98. Okay. So it's the number of observations, 100 minus degrees of freedom, 2, it's going to be 98. 100 minus 2. Okay, so this is the degrees of freedom. The critical values of the D distribution depend on the degrees of freedom. Okay, usually T distribution has, in absolute term, higher critical values than the normal. You can see, for example, 270 is greater than 2.75. 4.6 is greater than 2.75. So the critical values from the T are always higher than the critical values from the normal. Okay. Now, the other thing which is important is the second approach we talked about. The second approach we talked about is the confidence interval. What does the confidence interval include? The confidence interval includes all the likely values of a coefficient, of a parameter. Okay, so for example, you estimate a coefficient, let's say 0.93, and the 95% confidence interval is 0.75 to 1.09. What does this imply? This means that we are 95% confident that the interval contains the true but unknown parameter beta. So the minimum value beta can take is 0.77. The maximum value beta can take is 1.09, and on average beta is 0.93. Okay, so the confidence interval contains the minimum, the maximum, and the average value that beta can take. The minimum, the maximum, and the average value beta can take. The minimum, the maximum, and the average. Okay, and you would need to include this in your project as well.
Inditex is one of the largest fast fashion companies in the world.
You need to include this in your project as well, confidence intervals.
Nowadays,
usually confidence intervals are two-sided. Okay, how do you construct confidence intervals? Well, you're going to construct confidence intervals in the following way. You're going to calculate alpha hat, beta hat, and the standard errors. You choose the level of significance, for example 5%, and the confidence interval is beta hat minus this product, beta hat plus this product. Okay, and the confidence intervals, I repeat, contains all the possible values of beta hat and the minimum value, the maximum value, and the average value of the two coefficients. Okay, the minimum, the maximum, and the average value of the coefficients. So these are the confidence intervals, and the tests of significance would always give you the same results. So they would always going to give you the same results. Always are going to give you the same results. That's why you would need to confirm this in your project. When you use the t-statistic, when you use the p-value, the results you're gonna get are going to be always the same. The results you're gonna get are always going to be, the conclusion you're gonna get is always going to be the same. Okay, so let's see an example. We have a regression where, in this case, alpha hat is 20.3, beta hat is 0.509, the standard error of alpha hat is 14.38, the standard error of beta hat is 0.25.
In this case, we discuss the development over the years,
6-1.
the reporting quality, and the
Okay.
of the challenges as I mentioned.
So you can use the test of significance approach, and you can use the confidence interval approach. Who is going to tell me what is the t-statistic for alpha?
We focus over
Who is going to tell me what is the t-statistic for alpha?
non-financial reports. And the elaboration of the code book, we indicate some variable names. So we check the number of
Who is going to tell me what is the t-statistic of alpha?
years to compare, and also what were the goals and how they compare with the years before to see the performance change. In this case, our findings in the first research question was an increase in the quantity and the degree of
1.98
of the circular economy.
For alpha,
we could see it,
what is the numerator?
Chairman letter,
No.
where,
Well, is
the speech about,
20.3 divided by
was
14.38.
saying that the company really wants to
Right.
close the loop
And the
The same for
t-statistic,
beta.
mention some
so
goals
what
and
is the
projects
numerator?
in a very broader way.
0.591
There was
divided by
at the beginning of the
0.2561.
report in 2014, there was a big gap
Okay.
between the materiality index, between what the internal stakeholders wanted and the external stakeholders wanted
So,
as well. But during
this
the
is
years, this
the-
gap was getting closer and closer. What it means that now, right now, in the materiality index, what the company is doing and the importance that the company is giving to
This is the
circularity and what
t-statistic.
the stakeholders want, it's pretty the same.
Okay, this is the
Regarding
t-statistic
second questions,
for this,
we use the
for the two
principles of balance,
coefficients.
comparability,
Okay,
accuracy, and clarity.
so
these were our findings.
the critical values for this specific case is minus 2.086 and 0.086. Where do I get this number from? Well, this depends on the degrees of freedom. So these numbers here depend on the degrees of freedom. Okay. So the test of significance approach gives me, well, here I'm not doing beta equals 0, I'm doing beta equals 1. So for beta equals 1, I get a t-statistic of minus 1.917. So I'm basically here.
With the years before. In the third finding, there was a lack of transparency on the details about the implementation. So one of the main projects they have is closing the loop. In this case, the closing the loop project is that they want to give another use to the clothes that people.
All this region is
they mentioned
what the region?
That, they are giving
This
these
is
clothes to some
the
organizations,
non-rejection region.
but there is no traceability about what's happening with those clothes. They just mention how many garments they have collected and how many garments they have gave to this organization, but there is no further information. Missing continuity of the data presentation. So as I mentioned, there are some years.
This is the
example,
non-rejection
in the
region.
Green to Pack
Okay.
project, that they mentioned
So
that they have changed the plastic.
what's the
hampers.
conclusion
And
here?
another
We
year
do
that
not
they
reject
mentioned,
since the test statistic lies within the non-rejection region.
So it's not really
Okay.
continuity in the target.
Or in other words, you can say
the measure
the absolute
indicators that they have been
value,
using during their reports. The absolute data not
you can
relative to
say
the annual production.
1.917 is
fast fashion business
less than
regarding circularity is the
2.086.
overproduction of clothes. In this case, in the report, they
Okay,
mention
it's
how many
less
clothes they
than
have put on
0.6.
stores, but not how many clothes they have produced. So it is not.
I can do the same thing with the
to
confidence
compare
interval,
how is the company
and the confidence
performing
interval
in this
would
market.
be beta hat, this is beta hat,
For all the projects, so
plus
there are some
minus
projects that they don't have
2.086.
some
This is the
goals
critical
or
value
indicators to
from the t-distribution.
And
This
the
is
7 is missing indicators for some projects. It's some years, as I mentioned before.
2.086,
There are some
and this
projects
is
that
the
they don't
standard
have
error,
real targets, so it has
is
been difficult to
0.2561.
okay.
Okay,
And the third question,
so what
we
is the
use
minimum
some
value
literature
beta
to
can
check,
take according to
one of the comparisons that we
the
used was
confidence
Patagonian
interval?
company, that is
The
a
minimum
sustainable
value beta can
fashion
take
company.
is
In
minus
this case, we found the main challenges for circular
0.251.
economy in fast
The
fashion.
maximum
They
value
continue
beta can
producing
take
growth as we
is
talked before. The main problem is
1.0433.
the overproduction
On
of growth.
average,
The
beta is
linearity
what?
of the business model,
The minimum
business
value
model
of beta
itself
is
linear,
minus
so closing the loop
point,
is a big major
minus
problem. The lack of
0.0251.
legislation.
The
Right
maximum
now,
value beta can take is
governments are starting getting
1.0433.
knowledge about circularity and what is
And
the
on average,
legislation,
beta
but
can
right
take the
now
value of what?
there are not real legislation about what the company should do to achieve a circular business model. The state of technology, yes,
On
there are a
average,
lot of
beta is what?
developments in this regard, but it is difficult.
What's the average?
To
The minimum
implement it
value
in large
is minus
scale. The difficulty to influence supply
minus
chain, as we know, there are many
0.0251.
suppliers,
The maximum
and
value is
getting and applying
1.0433.
circularity in
On
all
average, beta
supply
is
chain is difficult, especially because
0.5091.
it means that you
Okay.
need to invest money. Infrastructure challenge.
This is the average value.
With the state of technology, if you want to implement new technologies,
So
you need to change
everything
the
that is
infrastructure that you
included
have,
in the confidence
and
interval
in getting
is a
that
likely value for beta. Everything that is outside the interval
the last 7
is
years,
not a likely, likely value of
in the
beta.
text, it has shown a big increase in the
Everything that is
importance
inside
of circularity
is a
in
likely
their
value.
business.
Everything that
We
is
found
outside
critics on reports
is not.
in quality, analyzing the project
Okay.
and goals in detail. There are many
So,
articles about the way that
who is
they are
going to
reporting
help me
because
here?
it's not
Here we are
really
testing
accurate
whether
and it's not
beta,
transparent the way that they
whether
are doing
beta
it
equals
now.
1.
And
Is beta
the
equals
third
1 a likely
challenges,
value?
risks, and obstacles
Is
that the
beta
company
equals
has,
1 equals 1 the value of 1? Is it included in the confidence interval?
Keep a really
Is
positive
1
tone,
inside the
but they
interval?
don't mention challenges or major problems that they have had during the time.
Is 1 inside the interval?
Yes, yes.
Okay, it's inside the interval, so I cannot reject the null. The null says
Yes.
that beta can be 1. What about 0? Beta equals 0. Can I reject the hypothesis that beta equals 0? Is beta...
No.
Is 0 inside the interval?
Yes.
So can I reject the beta equals 0?
No.
So 0 is a likely value for beta, 1 is a likely value for beta. Everything that is included in this interval contains likely values of beta. Beta contains likely values of beta. Okay. Beta contains likely values of beta. Any questions? Anything you want me to repeat? I'm saying one more time that for your project, you would need to calculate both the t-statistic and the confidence interval. You have to do both approaches. Okay, you need to do both approaches. Now, once you have the interval, you can test whether beta equals 0. Cannot reject this one. Beta equals 2. what can I do with beta equals 2? What can I do? Can I reject or not?
Reject.
Hmm?
Reject.
I can reject.
Yes.
Why? Because this is outside the interval. Reject because
This is a
this
presentation
is
on a report that investigates Ferrari's
outside
commitment towards sustainable development
the interval.
by analyzing their disclosure of GRI 200 standards in
Okay.
order to understand their commitment
Reject
towards
because this
the
is outside the
achievement
interval.
of these SDGs using longitudinal content
Okay.
analysis approach. The company is Ferrari's SBA, and it's an Italian company
Because
that
this is
produces,
outside the
bottles,
interval.
and distributes mineral water both in
Beta equals
national and
0.5.
foreign markets, and
What can I do with beta
extracts it
equals
from its water
0.5?
source in Rialdo, Caserta, without any added
I remind you, this is the
CO2.
interval.
It is the fourth biggest Italian water bottle company.
0.5 reject or not reject?
20% of the market in terms of value and 8.3% in terms of volume. Their revenues amounted to 204
0.5 is inside the interval.
And they produced 960
Inside
million
the
bottles
interval.
in 2019. So we found it interesting to analyze the sustainability approach of this company because in 2011
So
they
cannot
were
reject.
fined by the AGCM for an advertising campaign that claimed that their products were
Okay.
products with
You can see
impact
0.5 is inside
and
the interval. This is the
AGCM
interval
identified
here.
several different
Okay.
downsides to the initiatives. And the first one was that the initiative only related to the emissions of CO2. So Impact Zero
Okay.
was a brand that only meant that they
So
CO2
if you change the
then the initiative was very short in its
if you
time
change
frame.
the
It was only
size,
2
you
months.
can use
And
a
it
different
only
critical
recovered
value.
26 million bottles that were
You can
offset by
use a 10%
out
or
of the 216
1%
million they produced that year. So it was very
critical
interesting
values
to
in this case.
analyze
So
their
we are lucky
approach because they went from being fined to being
that we have
awarded
the
by
p-value
Credit Suisse with the
directly
Sustainability Award
in Gretel, so we can basically go
go
directly to the p-value and see what is significant and what is not. Now, there are two possible errors that we usually make. The first type of error is when we reject a null that is actually true. We call this a type 1 error. Reject a null hypothesis that is true. We call this a type 1 error. The second type of problem is not rejecting the null when in fact it is false. This is a type 2 error. Okay. So reject a null when it's true is a type 1. Not rejecting a null when it's false is a type 2 error. There is always a trade-off between type 1 and type 2 errors. And the best thing we can do is to increase the sample. So the best solution is to increase the sample size. That's why having a large sample size is the best.
Company has made an enormous change because we have an entire chapter dedicated to sustainability, and sustainability is no more just something said because it's not a topic required by stakeholders, but is a proper business strategy.
I don't know if you managed to have,
in fact, they made a strategy that follows the UN SDGs that can be divided in 3 main topics, which is getting to net zero by 2050, caring for our planet, and improving people's lives. We can also see that they wanted to change from an international oil company to an integrated energy company, so it means that their strategy is really clear now, and it's really clear also in their annual report. Well, when we talk about materiality, we say that GRI standards require also. Okay, sorry. About materiality, we have to say about materiality that every company must indicate some index and they must report all the topics that interest the company and its stakeholders as well. But we see that it's mentioned about materiality in 2010, as well, of course, as 2020. But in 2020, the report presents more materiality topics. So they are more explicit and provide more information about each topic. While we'll talk about completeness, the GRI standards require that to talk about this argument we should consider the material covered, the topic boundaries and time. This means that materiality topics covered means the overview that the company has to its stakeholders. The boundaries is how these topics influence the company and how the company interacts with these influences. And time means how during the year how these influences, these topics has been related to the company. Of course, 2020 is more complete compared to 2010 reporting, because there are more detail given by boundaries and all the time report. Because we could say, as I said before, in 2010 there were a lot of omissions and not visions about the future, but only they used to talk only about. About management and the oil spill. While in 2020 we could see great improvement, and so about vision of the future of sustainability.
The names of the
and in conclusion, we can see that 2010 report was mainly focused on the management and the oil spill disaster. And we could see that in stakeholder inclusiveness, they were, even if not explicitly, they were a lot involved with stakeholders. Whilst for sustainability reporting, materiality and completeness, there were many lacks. On the other hand, the 2020 report on the closely adhered to those 4 principles. And they were considered in in-depth manner, so this means that GRI has highly influenced the way the company has developed their annual report and sustainability report.
As I said yesterday, yes, you can work on your own if you want. I said this yesterday. Benedetta says whether we can use the same country. I prefer not. If you want to do it, that's fine. But I can see Osmani has chosen Italy and Dirobio has chosen Italy. I would say, you don't need to do Italy.
Improved so much in 2020. Disclose
it's better to avoid it. Okay, avoid Italy and the UK.
Well, I think because they in that year, the GRI had different frameworks and a bit different, and also poorer, I think, respect now, and improved a lot.
So you say that they have reached the indicators.
They followed the indicators of that time, that during the time has changed, and so for that period they were complete.
I understand. Okay.
My suggestion is to be a bit innovative.
Yes.
Okay.
Sono la nova. Scusa.
Okay. Any questions? So I will walk you through the exercise and then we will come back at 15 minutes. So We're going to have a small break,
You are
and then more questions about
But one will be online and she will manage the presentation. So I need to.
Okay, so if she's managing the presentation, we need to make her a co-chair. What's her name? Carla. Carla.
So
Allora, partecipanti.
505.
This is Carla. Okay. Hello, Carla. Good morning. Now, one moment, Carla Lamesic, questa qua. 3 puntini, vediamo. Imposta come relatore. Cambia.
So a small break and then I'll
Now,
be back.
Carla, you should
Don't worry, if there are any questions, we're going to solve them.
to present. Would you like to try?
Yes.
You can share your screen.
1 second.
Sì.
Okay, the presentation mode, Carla. Yes, yes. Is it okay for everyone? Like this? Okay. Hello, everyone. Our group number is 4, and we are Tatiana, Ayla, Carla, Daniel, and Giuseppe. Today, 2 of us are going to present. We decided that it should be fair to have one presenter online and one offline due to the specific situation. So here's the outline of our presentation. Yes, next slide. And I would like to start from the organization itself. The subject of our analysis is IR of Hitachi, which is a Japanese multinational corporation which employs more than 350,000 people worldwide. And it contributes to a sustainable society by dividing innovation through data and technology as the social innovation business. With some of the social innovation projects, Hitachi directly aims to address global challenges that also correspond to its SDGs. A few years ago, Hitachi received the highest scores in the field of climate change and water security. It was also rewarded for excellence in integrated reporting for its report in 2020. Next slide, please. And Hitachi resolves the issues faced by customers and society through across 6 domains: IT, energy, industry, mobility, automotive, and smart life. Through unique and innovation solution called Lumada. It's a kind of AI developed by Hitachi, and it's really interesting, and if we had more time, I would share this video with you. Next slide. Yes, the main research question of our analysis is how has Hitachi intention for achieving SDGs changed from 2016 IR report to the latest one published in 2021, considering also the factors which cause to these discrepancies. So, Carla, it's your turn.
So I will move right away into the methodology before we get to the more interesting part of our analysis. So what we basically did, we chose the 2021 integrated report by Hitachi, which won the award, to see what's so special about it. It's compared to the first integrated report ever published by the company to see what has changed over the years. To get a clearer picture, we also consulted other journals and articles and other resources so we could critically assess the things that we found interesting. And in the end, we also conducted a small numerical analysis, searching for some keywords related to some of the SDGs within the reports to see how the prevalence of these keywords changed over the years. So on to the qualitative analysis. The general picture that we have seen in the report of 2016 was that they were very focused on financial KPIs, on growth, on with a business development, very much on innovation. However, they did have an ESG strategy, very clear, focusing on governance, on health and safety, also on human rights and environmental problems. But we found that they kind of were struggling still with their infrastructures and with their business processes, which the reason for that was that they were still recovering from the financial crisis in 2008, like many other companies, and they were kind of trying to recover from that crisis in order to build up their company again and be able to even address the problems that the society has more deeply. And then what we saw in 2021 was that because they built these structures, many projects were already underway. Many of their goals were intensified. So for example, in 2016, they wanted to be carbon neutral by 2050. And then in 2021, they already set the goal back to 2030, which is an improvement and a more intensified goal. Then we were asking ourselves why this difference could appear that clearly. So two things happened. One big thing was that in 2017, Hitachi launched an executive sustainability division, which was able to better address the potential business opportunities connected to investing in the SDGs, and also to talk with stakeholders, with shareholders, to really get what do our stakeholders want, what does society want, how can we align this and address the SDGs within that. And in addition, Hitachi is one of the Japanese companies that's applying the corporate governance code, and they changed some things also within those years so they could be able to focus more precisely on sustainability and SDG. Then onto our quantitative analysis. We chose the three main goals that we kind of saw were important for Hitachi, which is 8, decent work and economic growth, 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure, and 13, climate change. We searched the keywords that you can see here, and the main picture is that the number and the prevalence of these keywords related to the SDGs has increased a lot, which shows that they really address the SDGs more. They're investing in more projects related to them, and they're also focusing their report more on it. So I'm giving back to Tatiana for the conclusion.
I forgot to switch on the microphone again. Let me start the conclusion. As we all know, the 2015 SDGs were presented in 2015, and that fact had a significant impact on alignment of vision, value creation, and ESG strategy for Hitachi and many other companies. Hitachi has transformed its business structure, provided an audit specialized in sustainable development, invested a lot in new social projects, and also introduced its own environmental plan how to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030. And from focus on economic growth and financial results, the company became more, and its IR report became more environmental, society, and stakeholder oriented. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So it seems to me a story of improvement.
Yes. Yes, I think they started, the first report was in 2016, immediately after SDGs were presented. And of course, it was something new for all companies, not only for Hitachi. And it had time to develop, especially during COVID, because there were a lot of social aspects and they made a lot of improvements also in the field of environmental, society, and technology as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Tatiana. Okay, now group 5, Esselunga, Maggie, non ce l'aveva idea. Simone, Maggie, ok. E Carolina, okay. The other 2 guys are connected from, one is here, and the fifth, there, hello. Okay, Esselunga. Please put the presentation on. You have always sent news.
Okay, so good morning. Today we are presenting our analysis on the Esselunga's report. And if you come from the north or from the center of Italy, you probably know what Esselunga is, but maybe international students do not know about Esselunga. It is basically a retail shop chain, basically a supermarket, and it is widespread in the north and in the center of Italy. It is owned by an Italian family and it was founded in 1957. The first sustainability report of Esselunga came out in 2019 and the second one in 2020. And from here we start with our analysis. In fact, we want to make a comparison between the two. Our research is twofold. On the one hand, we decided to make a comparison between the 2019 and 2020 report in order to see how the major health event that happened in 2020, of course COVID, has had an impact on the GRI, of Esselunga's GRI. So we analyzed how COVID was taken into consideration in Esselunga's GRI. Secondly, we performed a content analysis, and Simone is going to talk to you about the content analysis of Esselunga's 2020 report. So, of course, Esselunga's report is really long. It is more than 200 pages, so we decided to focus just on one aspect, the environmental aspect. And in the report, it is divided into three main pillars: climate change, waste, food waste, and packaging. As regards climate change, the overall goal is almost the same in 2019 and 2020 report, namely the 30% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And you can see that from 2018 to 2020, Esselunga managed to reduce the its energy and the emission intensity despite the COVID pandemic. In fact, the COVID pandemic caused an increase, a high increase in the energy demand, but this was offset by the use of renewable resources. So the implementation of new policies and new structures using renewable resources managed to offset this increase in the energy demand. And as you can see from the graph, these are the comparison between the energy used in 2019 and the energy used in 2020, and the difference is between the energy coming from renewable energy and how much Esselunga managed to save. For example, the e-commerce service was fundamental during COVID time, and due to the e-commerce service, Esselunga gave its customers the possibility of doing the grocery shopping online and having it delivered at home, but of course this caused problems as regards delivery, and Esselunga implemented the use of many completely electrical trucks, 2 in 2019 and 27 in 2020. So this was an implementation and a way Esselunga addressed the COVID pandemic to create value. Then we have food waste and waste management. Overall, again, the overall policy is still the same from 2019 and 2020, but in 2020, Esselunga had to deal with a shift in the preferences of consumers. In fact, buyers used to prefer to buy raw materials instead of ready-made products. For example, as regards the bakery shopping, customers preferred to buy yeast and flour instead of ready-made bread, and it is easily imaginable as we all became bakers during COVID time, I guess. And Esselunga managed to address this problem by reducing the offer of ready-made products and rationalizing the offer of raw materials. So this is a way Esselunga managed to address this possibly arising gap expectation, the performance gap expectation, and a possibly arising public issue. Then we have packaging. And again, this was a major problem during COVID time because people prefer to buy packaged products instead of unpackaged products because they were perceived to be safer, for example. But this has to do with concerns about sustainable packaging. And Esselunga in 2019 used the 66% of products packaged in recyclable or compostable materials, whereas in 2020 the firm managed to reach the 93% of products packaged in sustainable packaging. So this is another way Esselunga managed to address this problem and to create value and to speed up the ecological transition thanks to or because of COVID. And then Simone will talk about the content analysis.
Thank you. So, briefly about methodology, we decided a research strategy was a case study, a research approach was inductive, philosophy of science, positivism. We just had one kind of data, which was qualitative, and was the 2020 sustainable report of module 2020, and then have the data from content analysis. Basically, just to get one second, we made the choices depending also on each other. For instance, we thought that case study, inductive, and positivism were suited to try to create some insights for future research, but maybe they weren't too much reliable as we just had one record.
I'm following you.
Yes,
You can follow.
Next slide, please.
Okay, just wondering what they say because someone is saying something. Break. I'm not sure about the break. Sorry, because we still have a lot to hear. So how about guys, you just have lunch during the presentation? You know, you can drink, have a bite, but no break, because otherwise we are not going to make it. Okay? So a little bit of effort today. Share the screen. They asked to share the screen. So guys, apologize that I had to interrupt you. We share this because they had that's all right. Okay. Okay, sorry. Sorry, Simone.
No worries. Next
Okay,
slide.
so analysis.
So this is the output of our content analysis. I don't know if you can see the numbers, but basically we had 14 codes through the environmental section of the report. Then, for the categories where we group the codes, we decided to use the three main pillars of Esselunga's environmental strategy, where climate change, waste management, and packaging, and as themes, the more abstract category, we decided to use the GRI standards. And
Where did you take these categories?
These are the codes.
Yes.
We got it from the environmental section of Esselunga's report.
Ah.
Yes. And for instance, we have a very large frequency of codes such as circular economy and renewable energy and energy efficiency, which actually is consistent with Esselunga's aim to carbon emissions. But also we see the important role of partnerships, stakeholders, and for instance supply chain in Esselunga's strategy, trying to integrate it also in the environmental aspect. Next slide. So, more into technical aspects, we tried to see if the report included the requirements inside each three standards, and we saw, for instance, GRI 305 and 6, sorry, 302 energy and 5 emissions very well reported, while 301, 7 and 8 as missing parts. For instance, they always...
In what year?
2020.
On the latest one?
Yes. Yeah, basically, okay. And also 2003 and 2004 were completely missing, but also we saw that they weren't materials. So we also tried to look at existing literature, but there weren't much on supermarkets and reporting, but there was like 5 papers on sustainability strategy in supermarkets, and eventually see that Esselunga with its strategy is pretty much in line with also the competitors, apart from the fact that Esselunga tries to engage more often to customers to have like sustainable strategies together, like planting trees or recycling napkins and recycling water bottles. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. So Salvatore says, if you have missing data about the subject, can we get them from other sources? If they are comparable, yes. But you need to share, you need to make sure that the data are comparable. Okay? You need comparable data. The So, at the moment, you do have, let's repeat what you have so far. You have the instructions for the project. You have received the instruction for the project. This is the PDF, and you have the link for the data. Okay. You would know somebody deleted
Okay, I'm Benedetta, and with my colleague Lisa, we will present to you our analysis about materiality assessment method in a big reporting system, a case study about
you need to write
so Ender is an Italian multinational energy company. Its activity is divided in 5 business lines, which concern the generation of electricity from both renewables and traditional sources, the transport and distribution of this energy, and also more value-added services provided to analytics. The reporting system of Enel is called Core and More, because it is structured in a way that there is a core report, which is the integrated annual report, and more reports, so the financial report, the sustainability report, the governance report, and the remuneration report, which provide more detailed information in compliance with the regulation. So we focus our analysis on the materiality assessment method used by Enel. As a matter of fact, Enel is a company which has multiple impacts, both social, environmental, and economic impacts, and therefore it has multiple relations toward different stakeholders in different countries. According to the international standard, a company should report only those elements material for the stakeholders, and should also provide a description of the materiality assessment method that is used to identify these topics. However, sometimes companies, and especially big international corporations, use the integrated report by seeking information towards a larger public rather than to a specific stakeholder. Therefore, sometimes the topic is are more driven by company choice rather than the stakeholder evaluation.
Considering this, we have based our analysis around 3 main questions. The first one is what is the materiality assessment method used by the company. Then there is an higher disclosure of information about materiality assessment. And to answer to this question, we have conducted a content analysis
considering the GRI 100K standard, it sets out the requirement
So, a
of
special type of
reporting the
hypothesis test is the
management
key ratio test
report.
when beta
Finally, we reflect on
equals
the
0.
quality and the effectiveness of the method by questioning its efficiency, since and prioritizing the most
where we're
salient
testing whether
issue.
coefficient is statistically significant or
So
not.
the question is
This
which
specific
is
ratio of the
the
coefficient is
action
known
that the
as the
company is going to
P-ratio
take to rational
or the
stakeholders. This slide represents
P-ratio of the
the
statistic. Let's have a look
standard
at an
self-awareness
example.
used by
The
NL.
coefficient is
In fact, we note the
1.1,
GRI
and the standard
100
error
standards
is
and
1.35,
the integrated
the
report
P-ratio
framework.
is 1.10
As an extraction
divided
of
by
integrated
1.35.
thinking, the integrated report
In this
describes
case,
how the company
minus
creates value by
4.63
transforming capital
is
into output, lead to
0.440
results in terms to effect on
divided
capital
by
density.
0.96
NL describes its business model in a
divided
detailed
by
and complete way by
0.96.
providing, as you can see in this graph,
Okay.
different categories
So the
based on
T ratio
quantitative
is very
data,
important
and the category
in terms of
are
statistic
people,
coefficient
human capital,
is
the number of
significant or not.
employees, the percentage of
Okay.
women in
Now,
management
the
position.
constant term
While in
could be
regards to the
usually
materiality
could be
assessment, our
insignificant.
impression
Why the
is
constant
that
term
it
is usually not
doesn't
significant?
respect the materiality and the stakeholder
The constant term is usually
the
not
stakeholder
significant
relationship
because
principle of the integrated
we do
framework,
not
and the
have
materiality
much
analysis is described
information
in
about
approximately
what is
way,
happening
merely mentioning
in
that
this
it is the
area. We
same
do
as
not
one
have
disclosed
much information
in
about what is
sustainable
happening
report.
in this
Furthermore,
area.
the issue
Okay,
reported in the integrated report were
let's have a
identified
look at an
by
example
applying a
from
primary issue
finance.
or a financial community filter on the stakeholders.
So
So
this is the
our
excess return
final
on specific
consideration
stock.
is
This is the excess return on the
prioritize
market.
the shareholders
And
over the
here,
stakeholders.
So
excess
therefore, we have
return
extended our analysis to the sustainability report,
on stock.
where conversely the materiality analysis is described extensively. From a theoretical point of view, we believe that the materiality analysis, the materiality assessment method used by NL is quite good because it respects the two-dimension of the materiality principle. So it considers both the company impact and both the stakeholders evaluation.
Okay.
And it is divided in 5 different phases. The first, identification of the issues. The second, identification of the stakeholder. The third, which is very important to balance the different opinion of the stakeholder and involves the assignment of relevance to the stakeholders. According to 3 main criteria, the influence, so the power, the dependence, how much they depend on the business activity, and the urgency. Then the fourth phase concerns the assessment of the stakeholder priorities, and this phase involves some form of the stakeholder engagement, especially surveys and interviews. In the 2020, were conducted a customer satisfaction survey, a work from home survey regarding the pandemic crisis, and also a supply service, and other initiatives to strengthen the relationship with the local communities. The 5th and the final phase concern the assessment of the company positioning on the different issues. And in this case, the survey and the interviews are submitted directly to the chairman and the CEO of the executive officer. And so, since NL is a multinational company, this method is replicated by each subsidiary in all the different countries in which the company operates, and then the results are sent to the holding company, to the headquarters, which organize them into realize the group materiality metrics. So this is the 2020 materiality metrics of panel. It classified the issues in business and governance issues, social issues, and environmental issues. And we can note that along the horizontal axis are placed those issues which are relevant for the stakeholders, while along to the vertical lines, those issues which are relevant for the company's role. So we can see how for the company's role is particularly relevant to the occupational health and safety and the sound governance and fair corporate governance. The circular line indicates
exact significance level for the p-value. The p-value gives us the plausibility of the null hypothesis. This is the important bit.
Yes, only in that area, because they are
So the
relevant
p-value
both for
gives
the
us the plausibility of the null hypothesis.
And we can see how the
If the
stakeholder
p-value is
place more
12%,
importance on the energy
then
distribution
do
and
we
the
reject the
decarbonization of
1%?
the energy.
No.
So the company is
Do we
more
reject the
focused about the
5%?
governance,
No.
the pandemic
Do we
crisis,
reject the
the occupational
10%?
health
No.
is priorities,
Do we
while
reject
the
the
stakeholder more on
20%?
energy, decarbonization,
No.
so
Yes.
environmental.
Okay. So the
This gives
p-value
us
will give us
table
directly how
show the results of
plausible
our
the
content
null
analysis. We have
hypothesis is.
displayed the content analysis
Okay.
only on the materiality assessment
So
and the disclosure.
let me go
So
now
we have
to
used as reference the GRI 133
let me go
standards.
now to
And
graph.
we can see how the company did really good in the respecting the 132 standards, while it doesn't present the same result for the 131 and the 133 standards, because we have found a lack of information in describing how the company evaluated the stakeholder priorities, because it mentioned that it uses some form of stakeholder engagement, such as, for instance, the survey, but it doesn't describe, for instance, how these surveys are conducted and what questions and how the results are managed. So, to conclude, our analysis showed that the NL used a quite good material assessment method, which is good from both a theoretical but also in practice, because it allows the company to size the emerging issues also in a tough period such as the pandemic crisis.
Let me remind you
Therefore,
the
we expect the same efficiency in identifying and prioritize the main issues in 2022. And by considering the latest statement that Anel has made through the Twitter account and in the Italian television broadcast, we believe that it has identified the Ukraine-Russian conflict and the related energy price increase as a material issue for the company, and it has also taken some initiatives such as fundraising, employee fundraising to save the children. And so therefore we believe that in the 2022 sustainability report, the company should describe how it has identified these issues as material, and since there is a conflict of interest that these issues imply in some way, we think that we should provide more evidence, more details about how it has identified these issues, and this is necessary for the reliability and the balance of the information. So these are the reference that we have used under our search, and thanks for your attention.
Okay.
What about the coefficient beta? The T ratio is 6.8 and the p-value is 0. Do we reject the null?
Yes, we reject the null at all the level of significance.
All level of significance. Okay. How can we construct the confidence intervals? We can construct the confidence intervals by going at confidence intervals for coefficient here. And this is the 95%. This is the minimum value of the constant we take. This is the maximum value of the constant we take. Is 0 inside this
Voi
interval?
siete, you are 40, Rabasio, Razzivante, Romagnoli, e Cicero. Am I right?
Okay. What's the answer? Is 0 inside this interval?
No.
No? So what's the conclusion?
Good afternoon, everybody. Sophia and I are here today to present to you the work of our group, which is also composed by Giorgia, Rebecca, and Petra. The research question on which we base our effort is: does Inditex succeed in creating value for its stakeholders while respecting and actively safeguarding human rights? Inditex is a global retail and distribution company which operates in the fast fashion industry, and it includes 8 diversified brands, among which the most famous are Zara, Pull&Bear, Massimo Dutti.
This is
the fast fashion business model rests upon complex supply chains with main stages of the production outsourced in developing countries where the cost of manufacture are lower. The eagerness to pursue profit maximization has often seen fast fashion companies involved in scandals due to the adoption of unethical behaviors and exploitative practices toward local workers and communities.
Zero is not inside
Accordingly,
because this number here
to avoid reputation generation, many companies have started integrating the social dimension into their strategies by disclosing information regarding human rights. So why did we choose Inditex? First of all, being present in 88 countries and with such a big number of employees, it is one of the world's leaders in the fast fashion industry. Furthermore, in recent years, the company has deepened its commitment in human rights protection after the adoption of the policy on human rights in 2016. And another relevant reason is that, as you can see from the materiality matrix, both external and internal stakeholders have attributed a very high level of relevance to human rights and related topics. And last but not least, the company has been highly criticized in the past due to scandals occurred in its firms related to human rights and labor rights violations. So, on the basis of all these considerations, we have decided to investigate how the company succeeded in creating a positive value for its stakeholders with a specific focus on its suppliers and local communities. We based our work on the 2020 Inditex annual report, making some references also to past reports. And as concerned the methodology, we adopted both qualitative and quantitative tools to analyze first the international framework and then the policies adopted.
This is what we have done so far.
The first part of our work consisted in understanding whether Inditex followed the international framework to draft its annual report. So we analyzed the report, checking the level of compliance
multiple regression
to the international framework, making reference both to the guiding principles and the content elements. And after that, we made a qualitative analysis in which we attributed to each of these aspects a judgment going from non-sufficient to good. As we can see from the table, the overall performance of the company can be considered good, as the majority of these aspects were reported in the report. However, we have noticed with respect to the guiding principle a consistent lack of completeness in disclosing some negative information relating working conditions and negative effects on communities. After that, we have conducted a content analysis to see whether Inditex respects the GRI standards in creating value for human rights along its supply chain.
That would be great.
The coding instrument is formed by 3 main topics, which are human rights, value creation, and a safe and healthy environment. We have analyzed the information disclosed by the company with respect to these topics, and then we have verified if the requirements of the GRIs were satisfied or not. As you can see from the last page, the last column, in which the indexes, the community indexes are shown, we have found quite satisfying level of disclosure about these topics, but not very particularly relevant with respect to human rights. In fact, among the most critical aspects that were missing in the report, we have found information regarding the transparency along the supply chain, and also regarding operations that may have negative impacts on local communities. Last consideration is that while many of these statements were present with respect to Western countries, they were not available in developing countries, which are the areas in which in reality these social issues are
let's try to change our model a bit. Now,
so after investigating whether Inditex had a good level of compliance with the main international reporting frameworks, the GRI and IR, we tried to understand in more detail which policies and strategies they implemented in the field of human rights and more specifically in the sustainable social management of the supply chain. Because since the supply chain is mostly located in developing countries, that is the area where they could have the most negative impact, both on the workers in the suppliers' factories and on local communities in terms of human rights and labor rights violations. And as we have seen in the previous slide, the lack of transparency and lack of disclosure of negative information about scandals, specifically relating to suppliers and local communities, is one of the main weaknesses in their annual report. So their supply chain strategy is based on three pillars. The first pillar is increased transparency and traceability in the supply chain with a specific reference to raw material processing, because that is where violations can be. Then impose stricter compulsory labor standards
could take the
for all manufacturers and suppliers, and most importantly, keep checking compliance with these standards, both before establishing a business relationship with the supplier through pre-assessment audits and for the entire duration of this relationship through social
why I would need the
Inditex
model, because
helps suppliers to comply with these standards through corrective action plans, but if no compliance persists, any relationship with that supplier is interrupted. Finally, the negative impacts on suppliers and local communities are constantly monitored through 12 local direct platforms, also called clusters, where local employees interactively engage with local stakeholders to anticipate and possibly prevent breaches. So in the past 5 years, from 2016 and 2020, they greatly improved their performance in human rights protection. Most of the policies and strategies that I've just mentioned have been strengthened and refined in this period. They also changed the governance structure to reflect the increasing importance given to sustainability and human rights protection, and they promoted a great number of training initiatives for employees to change corporate culture. Then, since they are one of probably the main leader in their sector, they are trying to have a wider positive impact by spreading best practices across the industry and also by increasing the number of social projects, especially health or education projects for local communities. This effort has been increasingly recognized through various awards by external organizations, among which the WDI Prize for Supply Chain Transparency is the most recent. So we have created these graphs just to show you how both financial and social indicators have had a positive trend in the past 3 to 5 years, except of course 2020 has been the reason for this. So indicators but for workers, communities and suppliers all had the tendency to improve in this period. Given these results, we may conclude that Inditex has been overall successful in creating positive social value for the stakeholders, respecting human rights, and that human rights protection has been a precious tool to meet society's expectations. There are still problems, of course, regarding, for example, the completeness of the report, but the answer to our research question is overall positive. However, this conclusion can be easily criticized, especially when we look at different sources of information. We analyzed a number of academic papers underlining how Inditex strategically selected the information to include in the reports to restore its reputation, giving the impression of change without actually changing its way of operating. This can be understood within the framework of impression management theory and also legitimacy theory, because Inditex is trying to maintain its legitimacy to operate in society without actually aligning with public expectations, but only giving the impression to do so and distorting public perception. This is confirmed by the fact that many scandals have emerged in very recent years, especially regarding serious human rights violations in China and in Brazil, as I said before. But no information about this has been disclosed or included in the report. We also analyzed H&M very briefly, just to see if the main competitor for Inditex had a better performance, because in theory it had a greater expertise in managing the supply chains, but actually the two cases were very similar. So they implemented similar strategies. They were very good on paper in human rights reporting, but there seemed to be a gap between theory and action for both companies.
And this is the outcome. So first
Therefore, we may conclude that
statistical
great progress has been made, but the fast fashion industry needs to cooperate to develop more effective policies and more realistic and action-oriented forms of disclosure to ensure that the respect for human rights is not just another management strategy, but a way to create real value for all the stakeholders.
1%.
So this is our couple of references and
significant. Making sure is this beta 1. Is this beta 1 statistically significant?
Yes.
At what level of significance?
1%.
1%. Is beta 2 statistically significant?
Yes, of course. It is also 1%.
1%. So all are significant. Okay. So how are we going to call this model? We're going to call this model as the non-linear model. Why are we going to call it non-linear? Because as you can see,
what's her name?
In the graph,
Allora,
the girl, she just breaks
però aspetta, non so cos'è sta cosa qui.
Where you have
Devo
this
andare su Niang. Allora, Niang.
what you have this inverse view. Now, the economic interpretation of this inverse view is very important from an environmental point of view.
You are
What
the
are we
speaker
saying?
now,
Could someone
and you
give
can
an
the
explanation
screen,
of
okay?
what we're saying
You
here?
are welcome.
So what are we saying here? What is the rationale behind this model? What is the rationale behind this model?
Good.
Just waiting for my colleague to share
What
the
is the
presentation.
rationale? Yes?
As the country gets richer and richer, the country outsources more production, and also we have more innovation, so the CO2 goes lower.
So this is very good point.
Sorry,
so
I just have to
country is becoming
accept
richer
something.
and richer. We are
Meanwhile, we are waiting.
CO2 emissions per capita tend to decline. So we have basically three different periods. We have the period when you are poor. When you are poor, you become richer, you need to pollute more. So your CO2 emissions are going to increase. Okay. We have this area where CO2 emissions remain stable.
Yeah, I have.
So
my
you
problem
can
is that I
become
have
richer
to accept
without
something, and it's gonna quit my
having
Teams,
more
and then
pollution.
I have to come back.
And
okay.
Be able to share my screen.
How long do you
this
think you'll be?
period
Like
where
30
CO2
seconds.
emissions decline, but
That's
the
alright.
country
We didn't have the break, so we have a little bit.
Yeah, all right. Okay.
Okay.
That's alright.
So we have three periods, I repeat.
So while we are waiting, just a feedback
first
from you.
period
Do you think
is
that it is
you
worth
need
to undertake a
pollute
working
to
group
become
like
richer.
that,
The second
or
period is
and
when
that to be part of the
pollution
final
remains relatively
evaluation, or
constant.
not?
And the last period where
You enjoy that?
pollution
I think it was
declines.
Okay, now you are here anyway. No, I'm joking. Guys, did you enjoy or would you have preferred just
Now, this type of inverse view, how we would call this inverse view approach? How can we call this? How do you know this? How do we call this inverse view?
Like an official report, I don't know, similar to what we are doing.
Environmental
That they do exist and you define them, but I don't know, I would have
Environmental, this is the
made it
environmental.
more useful in order to understand more clearly what we were doing, but at the same time, sometimes I was a bit
This is the environmental
yeah.
Kuznets curve, and we're going to observe this
Yes, I don't
when
like some
we're going to
simulation
observe this
also
when you are
done by you
analysis
that is of a higher level with respect to what we
about
Okay,
this
I was hoping that, for
Okay.
example, presentation of the other week would be very useful. The guys that came to the class present the case
only the first
study.
part.
So I thought that, you know,
It's difficult to see this
what they
decline.
have done in practice could be very useful, and Susanna's presentation could be very useful to this end. Instead, you suggest to do a proper simulation of a case study or a remote work.
How can we do an F test? How can we do an F test?
Because probably
we need to test whether these two coefficients are simultaneously used.
Question, the method to use, the
How can we do
papers
this
to analyze, even if I suggest, I gave you a list of
you need to
many
go
things
to
to do, but
tests
maybe
or
you find
variables
yourself lost in that.
and
Okay.
highlight.
Okay. Good, thank you very much. Other suggestions?
Highlight the two coefficients you want to test.
For some of us, it was the first time we saw all these
and
annual
the
reports
test
and all these
here.
frameworks. So maybe you haven't seen them
is 298 and the
once before.
is basically 0.
To know where to look for
So
something.
the null hypothesis that
So say again, what would you suggest to make
To read maybe one entire, to take one entire annual report
reject the
and
null.
see, okay, you can see that what we have done about this
What
is
is the F
recorded
test?
here.
In this case, what is tested?
the guidelines with the
Tested
report.
the null that beta 1
Also what we have done
and
during
beta 2
the
Okay.
simultaneously 0.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and this is the F test 298 and the p-value
Any other
is 0.
insight?
Okay. Should I show you one more time how I did the F test?
Maybe next year I can ask
Tests
one
are
of
not
you
ready.
to come in my class and present your case study of this year to give an
And you can do it
example of
with a word test, and you can do
to
it
my new
with
students, which will be different from me.
Okay.
I'm joking, you're all good.
Any
So
questions
what
here?
is going on here?
I think we are almost there, but
Nihad, you need to share the tab with the PowerPoint, please.
Anything you want me to repeat?
I think you're just showing your.
So, we've done
What are you
in
seeing
your
right now?
project the
so
non-linear
like
the participant
me and
screen.
you.
And now what
here
are you
what
seeing?
what you are asked to do in the project.
Are you seeing
need to
the
do
PowerPoint?
tests, p-values,
No, the
quantitative
presentation.
interval,
But
and
that
F
is your desk, so this is already
Okay.
Yeah.
You need to do the t-test,
Okay,
the
that's weird.
p-values, confidence
okay, guys, you
intervals,
don't have
and
to
F
ask, so you
tests.
need to be a little bit no,
Okay.
it's the opposition.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
And we also
But if you
conduct
can,
the F test with the
Nihad, we're
restrictions,
just gonna do that.
using the restrictions.
Okay, that's really
So,
strange.
What restrictions? We estimate the
we-
reduced module.
Maybe you just have to close a window. I don't really know.
Okay, while we are waiting,
I'm sorry.
maybe touch on the people that were with yesterday class.
Join for two
Do
parameters,
you think that
like beta 1 equals to 0 and beta 2 equals
exercise
to
that
1.
we have undertaken yesterday could be
Still
part
answer.
of the exam?
If you want to,
I
That,
can
did you try that first for the
you
people
can do
that were
reading
there?
restrictions from here.
And do you think that that be part of the exam
Yes.
evaluation?
Yes, but
Maybe with some kind of previous preparation for that, like
What preparation?
An F test, right?
yesterday was first time, so it also we took time
Are you working now?
equals 0,
and
something
there
like
was
that.
No, we see just a black screen.
For an evaluation as
But it's already
No, you need to have some
or
type
just a black screen.
of theory back in this. So in this case,
I opened the
there's no
Google
reason to
PowerPoint.
expect
It's open.
No, okay, so
1, 0,
you can't really.
to know
It's not
I'm
working.
sorry.
whether both of them are 0. Okay.
Okay, we're dealing with that, Niad.
I'm so sorry. The name of
don't worry.
the variable inside the parentheses.
Yes,
Not one or two. If I remember well.
Yeah, no, you can do it like this. I'm not.
So I'm trying to put maybe after we will get blank numbers.
You can do it like this. For example, beta 2, beta 3. It works.
We also have to think about the anxiety aspect of.
But this is the same result as the result I got earlier.
Because yesterday we were still relaxed when we knew it was
Okay.
an attack. It was just okay. Yes, if I think about doing what I did yesterday,
but this is the same result as the omit heritage case.
I think I would have not
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So you said
Do you want to accept some other type of
everything that we did to us.
So the test is based on a restricted and an unrestricted model. I'm going to skip that because you know this stage. The F distribution now is depends also on the degrees of freedom. Okay, so the F distribution is similar to the T distribution, whereas the chi-square distribution is similar to the normal distribution. Okay, so we're using the F test when we have relatively less data. We're using the chi-square when we have a lot of observation. Now, can I use
okay, so good afternoon everybody. I'm Rosita, and with you I'm going to present you our analysis on Intesa Sanpaolo integrated reports. We are from Group 8 that also involves Vania, Eduardo, and Nihat.
Okay.
So next slide, please.
So, for example,
this is the content that we are going to talk about.
This is the
and
test.
First of all, we start with the organization. So, Intesa Sanpaolo is the largest bank in Italy with over 1 billion assets managed, but it also has a strong international presence, collecting more than 7 million foreign customers. Regarding a sustainability perspective, we can see that Intesa Sanpaolo Group has a relative long history in sustainability effort. It started in 2003 with issuing voluntary sustainable reports and just later on adopting the integrated report framework. So this long-term commitment in sustainability has been recognized by international authorities and allowed the group to be, for example, the next slide, please. Sorry. Oh no, sorry, this one. Sorry. So, for example, allow the group to be the only Italian bank to have been included in the Dow Jones Sustainability World Index. And in 2001, the group was included also in the leadership band of Carbon Disclosure Project with an A- score.
I'm going to skip.
So our analysis is based.
R squared is very important. It's a very important measure of fit.
Okay.
It tells us
our analysis is based on environmental capital, and in order to do so, we defined the following research questions.
The square correlation between y and y hat. How close is the association between y and y hat?
So I will read the research questions. The research question is how does Intesa Sanpaolo create environmental value? Did they increase their performance in terms of reporting sustainability growth and non-financial disclosure in the last 5 years? And are the findings consistent with GRI standards? Our tools that we used in the analysis was the section called Environmental and Climate Change of non-financial statements from the last 5 years, so 2015-2020 time period, and then a content analysis based on GRI standards. So the first thing that we did was a comparison between the last 5 years report. Then
the methodology that on which we build our content analysis is based on the following step. First of all, we have the selection of the content to analyze that, as I said before, is the non-financial statement regarding environmental impact. Then we define the categories and the units that we wanted to use. The categories are related to each of the GRI 300 standards, so materials, energy consumption, water, water and drainage, emissions and waste. So they are referring to GRI 301 to 306. And the unit that we use is the word. So we use the keywords like energy consumption, GRI, and so on to observe the frequency of the topics related to each of these categories. And then we developed, of course, a set of rules for coding. And for each of the GRI categories, we can say we marked 1 if the related topics were present, 0 if they were absent, or we use no significant data if the information provided were not enough. Then we scan the text using these rules that we adopted, and we gathered all the information within a table that you will see later. And the last step is analyze the result and draw conclusion. We did that, and then we added descriptive parts in order to enhance the content analysis and to better understand which was the improvement in this 5 years period. And then we went to the findings, of course, that my mate will tell you.
Thank you. So next slide, please. So overall, in the 5 years, we see a 10% increase in adoption of GRI 300 standards. So each report adds on to the new, or adds on new guidelines from those standards there each year. The section on environmental and climate change was split into sort of 3 main categories. So the green economy and the circular economy were related to the financial products that were on offer to assist in their environmental efforts. So for the green economy, this mainly came out in the form of green mortgages available to, coming in. Sorry, excuse me. Green mortgages coming in from the retail sector. We saw amount to 46% of the overall investments in 2020. There's a significant increase, over 1,500% between 2019 and 2020 in the uptake of these green mortgages, and that is primarily because the Italian government became the guarantor for individuals.
So which model is better?
Who were interested in these mortgages.
Which model is better?
In terms of the circular economy, they are very active, and this is the core part of their environmental focus, I guess, from a financial standpoint, in promoting circular economic activity. So they've set up an innovation centre and an economy lab, which assists entrepreneurs and businesses engaging in investment opportunities, setting up their business to participate in the green economy. And they also have worked quite heavily with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. I think that's been since about 2016, and they've set up a dedicated fund of €6 billion to support this transition. Next slide, please. So another element of their financial products is the green bonds. So they were the first Italian bank to introduce these green bonds in 2017, worth up to €500 million, and they are funding currently 76 projects from this fund.
It's the key.
In terms of resource management, this is to do more with their daily operations as a bank. So we can see that they started reducing the tonnage and the paper used year on year. As we can see, COVID-19 has obviously significantly impacted that with a 53% decrease since 2015. Also, with
I have a question, Professor.
Water consumption year on year, and also their waste. So next slide, please.
Yeah.
So relating to the methodology that Ross just described, this is to do with their daily operations. So we can see, as expected, there's a keen focus since 2015 on their energy use and their emissions from the daily operations, but not so much on the water and waste front. That is because as a financial business, they're not really producing any concrete products that we can physically use. So there's very little waste apart from the paper, and very little water used apart from their offices.
Any questions?
As we can see as well, in these materiality matrices, we can see that from 2015, which is the top left, you can see that the climate change is fairly middling in the report. So it's of medium importance to both their stakeholders and the bank at that time.
I have a question about
moving on to 2020, which is the lower
you said that
the lower chart. We can see that they've started diversifying the idea of climate change into a transition to a sustainable green and circular economy, and they've also, which is up in the top, very top corner of the matrices there, if you can see it. And then also they've mentioned a direct environmental impact, which is still quite low, but it's of increasing importance to the stakeholders as well.
Just compare it.
Next slide, please.
Look,
so some critiques here.
1018.
So there's some unclear behaviour related to the indirect risks, environmental risks due to their activities. So this is looking at their investment portfolio.
And
seeing how much
what about if I had just one model and I had
secondly, there's no clear GRI standards on financial products related to green financial products. In essence, there are some that look at the indirect economic activities in the GRI sort of 200 range, but there's nothing specifically related to financial products. And then secondly, and thirdly, there's a lack of connection between the environmental section of the IR and their investments in fossil fuels, etc.
You cannot compare it.
To conclude, we've got some 3 positive points. Overall, the quality of the disclosure in regards to the GRI 300 standards was quite high. We can see that, obviously they've implemented more and more of these standards year on year over the last 5 years. And since 2018, they've particularly focused on promoting a circular economy by establishing separate divisions and key partnerships in that area. Room for improvement, there needs to be a greater effort in promoting their green financial products for retail customers. Once the government subsidies end, there's no plans that have been outlined to carry on that product. So they need to figure out how to do that. And then finally, they need to do a bit more in terms of promoting their actual financial activities within the fossil fuel industry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
So let's have a break, give some rest, and then we're going to be back. Okay. So a small break.
The circular economy increased from 0 to 4.
I know, sorry. You want to? It's just the connections. I think that they add with
they have more partnership since more partnership in order to invest in startups and do more initiatives towards circularity.
So that this thing from 0 to 4 is something that you indicate.
Yeah.
Because of course, in the last 5 years, we saw that there was a change in the amount of investing in that particular topic.
It can be considered 2018 can be considered as a change year towards circularity because it was more important for the ESP.
Okay.
But it's everything.
Tremuli, Panacore, siete voi, il report della presentazione. Ok, perfetto. Coca-Cola.
Lo farò dietro? Questo presto intero? Ok, poi basta fare il I think yes.
Okay, perfect. This is yours.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Today I'm here for presenting my group work that I prepared together with Federica Manacore, Lorco Vestilli, Ilaria Bocchiaro, and Chiara Gotta. We are going to talk about the relationship between Coca-Cola and the natural capital. So first, I'm going to introduce you the organization, even if I think that most of you know Coca-Cola. Then I'm going to explain why we chose this topic, so how Coca-Cola manages natural capital. Third, I'm going to explain the method we use, and a spoiler, we use the content analysis method. As fourth, we present our findings and our criticism, and last but not least, the conclusion and the references. So first, the Coca-Cola organization, the Coca-Cola company is one of the global leader in producing, bottling and distributing this soft drink, and it works in more than 200 countries. So, for the business, it's very important the relationship with its stakeholders, so customers, shareholders, employees, and bottling partners. What is very important for the business is also that it is decentralized in 5 sections. So, because it operates in Africa, Eurasia, Latin America, European Union, the Pacific, and the North America. And in this way, the company has the possibility to be really focused on the legislation of the places, of the 5 different sections, and be on the cutting edge for what concerns the development of ad hoc solutions for whatever issue comes out. Coca-Cola prepared a plan for the 2025 mission, which is based on the UN SDGs, and the company showed really a lot of commitment for what concerns the environment. So these are a few data about Coca-Cola system in general. And this table, among all, is the comparison between the 2025 commitment and the situation of the company nowadays. And when talking in the documents, Coca-Cola is really confident by reaching these very ambitious goals. And this is a brief plan that regards packaging and water, which are going to be the focus of our work when talking about natural capital. We are going to see this in a few minutes. Yes, natural capital. Why natural capital? Because we chose this topic because sustainability is our current issue, and our investigations, but not just ours, show that Coca-Cola has a really ambiguous relation with natural capital, because it seems like on one side the company wants to protect it, but on the other side there's some proof that it is not really the reality. But we're going to move further on this point. This is a brief graphic of the portfolio of Coca-Cola, just to explain that really they have a lot of different drinks, soft drinks, and different soft drinks also require different packaging, different materials, and so on. So next, okay, the method we adopted is content analysis. We started with the Coca-Cola 2020 IR report and other non-financial documents. We stuck to the IR framework guidelines, and we work also with the GRI regulations. For what concerns the content analysis, we use this method in order to look for a specific keyword and then find all the notions we needed to use for our work. And I think this method was really useful for time sparing. As a matter of fact, we were quite brilliant in time management under this point of view. This is the part of our finding. The first part is regarding packaging. First, we discovered that, according to the Coca-Cola point of view, the company used those raw materials, so glass, aluminum, petroleum, and paper. The company showed a lot of commitment toward the environment, and as a matter of fact, has several initiatives with the stakeholders, and in particular the suppliers. And the company think it is very important to keep in touch with them so closely, because they every time they meet, physically and not physically, they share a lot of notions about technology and innovative notions, because they aim to develop a lighter package, and a package that contains less plastic and more biodegradable materials. So, wait a minute. Yeah, and Coca-Cola is aware of the fact that the company cannot afford, let's say, damages in the reputation, because the credibility is really important for Coca-Cola for what concerns the operating licenses. And when Coca-Cola has difficulties with licenses, the costs of the business will increase, and there's a consequently loss of the consumer base. So really great damage for the company. Next, please. Okay, this is water. Water is very important for Coca-Cola business. 93% of water is used in the supply chain, in particular 92% for agricultural purpose and 1% for packaging. The other 7% is for manufacturing, distribution, cooling, and dispensing. The company forecasts that through time, the following years, the business will grow a lot, and consequently, also the need of water will increase. And this is a problem on one point of view. But on the other side, Coca-Cola affirms that they are really focused on making the process more efficient, and they are trying new solutions, new methods also to recycle water, which can be a really winning strategy for their development, for the further development. Yes, and what we found very interesting is the specific citation of 25 critical sites, geographical sites, where the company has some facilities located there, and those facilities, they state, to be exposed to water risks with the potential to have a substantive financial or strategic impact on the business. Those are a few graphs about percentage of improvement in water efficiency since 2010, and this is about the water that Coca-Cola used for producing the soft drink that came back to nature and to the communities. This is about eco-years. We found out because despite its commitment, the commitment of the company, Coca-Cola is ranked in first position as global polluter, and those are few data about the CO2 emissions when burning Coca-Cola plastics. And we put the materiality matrix in this slide because we wanted to show the contrast between the Coca-Cola's commitment and what is the reality. So
packaging is here, and where is I think here. I can read it's here. This one. So our conclusion and suggestions are the following. So since there are some missing information, because we weren't really able to find each thing we were looking for, we would suggest Concrete to be more complete when preparing the reports. Then some records and documents were really difficult to find. I mean, they exist because we were able to find them, but we recognize that it could be more easier for us to have access to this to them. And so it is about being more transparent. And then the third and fourth point is about the inquiries we were talking about. So there is difference between reality and what Coca-Cola says. Coca-Cola should act in a more socially responsible manner and be more transparent, also being more responsible for the damages the company creates. So these are our references, and we thank you for your attention, and we are looking forward to answer any of your questions.
Okay, guys, thank you very much. Okay, so you were group 9.
Yes.
So now it's time of group 10. No. Oops.
What is this?
Scusi.
Non so cosa sia. Tornata? Non è andata via. Oh sì, devi andare dritta oggi. Allora, direi di chiudere a dopo.
Ok.
Questo è un PDF?
Sì.
Allora bisogna scorrere
Sì, no, facciamo così. È colpa mia, perché aspetta, sa come metterlo sul screen?
Puoi semplicemente scorrere giù, invece di fare il via, scorri un po' in giù e cambi le pagine.
Ok, sì, si preleva.
Allora, proviamo.
Vabbè, ok.
Prego.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. So we're group 10 for the TV project, and the company we talked about is Amazon. I'm Aaron, and we've got Sophie, Johan, Sylvia, Rashad over there, and is
1, 2, 3.
Sylvia's online. That's fine. So, quick overview of what Amazon is. Obviously, everyone knows it is an e-commerce giant selling, internet-based goods, pretty much most of the stuff that you own at the minute is you must have got it from Amazon. And at the minute, what we're doing now in terms of sustainability is more towards being net zero carbon emission by 2040 and carrying operations 100% of it by renewable energy 2025. Hence why you see all the energy banks running on nothing but electricity. However, with our research question, we decided to have a look at a different aspect, which is how Amazon addresses the criticism regarding the exploitation of workers, minimum wages, and bad working conditions in their reports. With the material that we used the 2020 report and some external articles from the same year.
Now,
So in our analysis,
well, this is an example of
the internal document is what Amazon
isotonic model for house prices.
but at the same time,
This is an example of using multiple iteration where you are trying to explain what determines house prices.
Understand
So,
what can be improved for Amazon, what can it do to make themselves more
this
of
study
a
considers the
sustainable
effect of
company.
various analysis on rental values for buildings and
Some
apartments
of the critical studies,
Quebec area.
here,
The
so the
rental
top,
value per
the top
month in
statements are
Canadian
from the report
dollars
themselves,
is a function of
talking about the respective freedom association,
from 9 to 14 variables. The paper is
or
using
tolerated use,
1990
not
data
tolerated
from the
use of
Quebec
child labour,
City,
forced
and
labour,
there
anything
are
like that, and also the well-being.
30,378
However,
observations,
the reality
12
found out with the
discounted variables
articles,
that include
which are referenced in the report,
age,
our report,
how old is the
is
property,
the fact that they are
bedrooms,
hiring and recruiting intelligent
area
analysts
per
to
room.
track and prevent
A
any
dummy
threats
variable,
in organising
a
to
dummy
give themselves a
variable
bad
is
name.
something that
With the forced labour,
you need also for your analysis. What is a dummy variable? A dummy variable takes two values. Which are the values that dummy variable can take?
Basically just being forced labour to work in the
Which values can a dummy
Chinese farms
variable take?
and
Who's
then
going to help
also
me?
with the
What variables can a dummy variable take?
workers in Chicago, America,
0 and 1.
developed countries.
0 or 1, nothing else.
Just sort of shows that
So the dummy
real side of
variable
Amazon,
can take
even though
0
they try to
or 1.
mark
Dummy
themselves
variable is very
So what we've done here for our
important
analysis is the four
because
sphere
the dummy
analysis
variable
with some numerical data.
can
So
give you
the numerical data
additional
comes from
explaining power, especially
from a
when
+2 or -2 situation, a +1 being the positives, which is on the driving forces, the positive sides, showing how Amazon can themselves and how they can see that they
so
are
there is
doing
one
a good
dummy
job
for the
towards
elevator and there is one
towards their
dummy
reports and their savings on the
for
human
the
side.
basement. So if there's an
On the other side,
elevator,
the training
the
courses,
dummy takes the
which
value
also have
down.
the -2,
If there
which
is
intensifies that, how bad a situation it can be, and
dummy
obviously
takes
each
the
of them link
value
with
of
each
1.
other, which allows us to
Okay, there
make
are
the solution that we have
other
in the middle.
variables that
So for example, in
the
our
number
reports,
of
we
outdoor
found out that
parking
Amazon
spaces, the
themselves is the
number of
most
indoor
customer-centric
parking
company on
spaces,
earth,
whether this is a
which
leased property
obviously
or not,
they take into
the
customers
distance
more
from the central,
people, and
from the
it's
business
the backbone of
district,
their business.
how many single parent families there are in the area, the distance in kilometers from the shopping center,
ensure that they
and
continue to be a stakeholder towards Amazon. And obviously, if
the
that's not the case
vacancy
for the
difference
most customer-centric
between
company
the
on
building
earth,
and
it
the
could also
census
lead to other stakeholders
so
losing interest.
these are the results.
The other hand was the 5 areas.
Okay, and this is the D ratio.
Facility, workers in facility.
Okay, overall,
However,
this model,
with the report themselves, we found out that actually, with the in the report, that actually they're kind of marketing the business as we're very nice and very charitable by focusing more towards on lower economically developed countries. Like I think one example we found was talking about a Bengali helpline that they managed to invest and set up towards, basically a helpline to call about poor working conditions and things like that. However, it contradicts with the last statement I was mentioning. We found in the article of the works in Chicago, so they're being overworked.
Okay.
Our next one was focusing on employee protection. However, as we said, we're tracking quite a big thing for the fact that Amazon are
highlighting
trying to intending to recruit organizations like this happens, trying to make them stay in place. And then what we had was responding to the events of supply chain. One thing we found out was during this report, we talked about COVID-19, the pandemic, and it was just talking about they were able to give disinfectants, any sort of sanitary products that would help with it. However, again, they're hiding on statements of slave labour, as mentioned in the previous report. And the final ones were employees ensure that they receive basic needs. Food, water, shelter, they're investing in those kind of funds, like the Housing Equity Fund. However, just because they say they can only offer basic needs, they can't offer anything higher up.
And the last thing I'm going to talk about is the quantile regression. Okay. Has anybody done quantile regression before? You know what kind of quantile regression is?
We should get a third party to approve their reports. Even though Amazon is a big company and they have all the money, more money in the world to do whatever they want to, it will help benefit them towards stakeholder confidence.
Your attention here, because this is something you also need to do for your project. Standard regression approaches, what they do is they model the conditional mean of the dependent variable. So you can model the conditional mean of the dependent variable. Okay, so when we do OLS, we are focusing on the mean of the variable. Okay. We could calculate from the value that y is take for any values.
Taking time to focus more on the human side of things, which obviously can cause a detrimental effect towards Amazon, as we said before. What they're doing instead of those sustainable energy, and all that stuff, that's perfect. They're doing exactly that, but there's another side.
But this is basically an extrapolation
and that
of
way,
the behavior of
Amazon
the
can still be able to save face
relationship between x and y at the mean or to the remainder of the data. We would say that this is a suboptimal approach. Why? Because OLS are measuring the average response.
Professor, Group 11 will present from Teams directly.
OLS is like a mean. OLS is like a mean. It's an average value. If you want to see what is happening when the y is relatively low or y is relatively high, OLS cannot help you. So OLS cannot help if your focus is on what happens.
Okay, group 11.
Yeah, we are here. I need that permission to share my screen.
Yes.
When y is relatively high.
Someone has left a mask. Probably you need a mask.
So you cannot OLS cannot help you.
Group 9. Someone.
Your focus is what happens.
I don't know. So if someone is missing a mask,
high or y is
we have a mask.
Why? Because OLS
so
is focusing on
me with
the
my
average response. When y OLS is focusing on the average response.
Maria, dove sei? Perché non ti vedo? Petra o Maria?
So,
she will present, I will speak.
A linear regression.
So, who is going to you, Petra?
Maria is going to do the presentation. I'm just going to speak.
Manage the presentation, okay. Okay. Eccola, Maria Teresa.
Okay. So, it would be possible to include non-linear terms in the regression
now
model.
she's
speaker. This is what we call the non-linear model in our
you
case.
Should be able to.
But the quantile regression represents a more natural and flexible way to capture the complexities
for group 11, you are all connected from home, am I right?
Conditional quantile functions.
Okay.
For the conditional quantile functions. So, what does quantile regression do?
1 second.
Quantile is looking at different segments.
Professor, in the meanwhile, can I ask you to switch off your mic when I start? Because otherwise
quantile regressions can be conducted in both time series.
I switch off my microphone. Okay.
Cross-section context.
Thank you very much.
It is usually assumed that the dependent variable, which we call a response variable, this is y, is independently distributed and homoscedastic. Quantile regressions are robust to outliers and non-normality. Okay, robust to outliers and non-normality. Now, let me see
Can you do it, Maria? Otherwise, I will.
No, if you can, because my privacy is down.
Yeah, I will. I only need the possibility to share.
And then I'm going to show you how we can do quantile regression. First of all, let me show you how we can identify outliers. In our case, how you can identify outliers in your project. So this is the linear model I have in front of me. Okay, this is the linear model. And what we could
can
do
everybody
is
see?
We can have a residual plot.
Yeah, we can.
Graphs, residual plot against time.
So I can start.
And the residual plot
good afternoon, everybody. My name is Petra, and I will briefly present you the findings of our analysis. So my group is formed by me, of course, Verdad, Denis, Maria, and Giza.
In 1926.
This is the roadmap of our presentation. I will briefly introduce the company chosen for this analysis and also explain the reason behind this choice. Then I will explain what our research is about and how we conducted it. And then I will introduce the findings we obtained with also some comments and of course our conclusion.
One for 1926.
So the company we choose is known as Cobalco, or also Cobalt Steel Group, which is a Japanese company with a long history since it was founded in 1905. It offers products and technologies about what concern iron, steel, aluminium, and copper, also construction machinery, and since 2000, also electric power worldwide. We decided to look at this company report since in 2017 an important misconduct was discovered. So the company had released falsified data regarding the quality of its aluminium, steel, and copper products for years. So nearly 600 clients of the company were affected by those falsified specifications. After they reported the misconduct, they also committed to more transparency towards stakeholders to avoid the recurring of such misbehavior. And so they started to produce integrated report from 2018. So our research question is which is the ethical stance of the group after the reported misconduct. So we decided to analyze how Cobalco changed or improved its ethical stance. To examine these issues, we used a longitudinal analysis. So we conducted a retrospective study. So we compared and we examined the previous data from the sustainability report issued in 2017, and we compared them to the data on the integrated report of 2018 for what concerned ethics. So our research specifically focused on what changes the company made to its ethical safeguards to improve the corporate culture and whether those changes were actually successful or not. So, of course, multiple changes were fostered by the company in the 2008 integrated report after the scandal. We will just focus on the different ethical safeguards in place in 2017 and then later in 2018. So 5 are the main components which actually constitute the safeguards. So the first one is about ethical policies and codes. In 2000, the company already formulated a corporate code of ethics in which are set forth the standards which COBE will comply. Then in the 2070 sustainability report, the company only mentioned the principles and standards, but they only list them. So the group did not disclose any information about how those principles are actually presided in everyday work. Neither they showed some effort in connecting them with the stakeholders. So actually the overall perception is that the company has never put really into practice the values that itself has defined also in the 2018 integrated report. The second, ethical safeguards is about training program. So even if the 2008 integrated report represents a crucial step towards human research program for Cobelco, since for the first time we see a section of the company annual report dedicated to its employees. There are no trainings aimed at strengthening those ethical values among the employees, neither in 2017 nor in the 2018 reports. The third one is about top management commitment. So, as stated by the CEO letter in the 2018 report, the main goal of the company is to regain the trust of all stakeholders and also to ensure that the reforms needed are made with a kind of sense of urgency. So, to show their actual commitment, the management system underwent a substantial reform from the 2017 organization. The first thing that changes that we find a division of the figures of the chairman of the board and director and the CEO. So the chairman is now an independent director from outside the company. The second change is that the board of directors is now composed of 15 directors, of which 5 independents, while until 2017 they do not have any set number for external directors. The third and last one is that the general meetings of shareholder also appoint an audit and supervisory committee, while until 2017 was directly the board of directors who appointed them. The fourth safeguard is about compliance officers. So a new compliance management department has been established on the 1st of April of 2018. This was already mentioned in the 2017 sustainability report, but with a substantial difference regarding their duties. So the committee in 2018 submits report and recommendation on the necessary actions to the board of directors, while in 2017 the committee had only the duty to organize seminars for the top management, while the employees only received the compliance manual of the company. The fifth mechanism is about safeguards is about reporting mechanism. So the firm has an internal reporting mechanism called whistleblowing, under which every employee can report violation of the code of ethics to an independent outside authorities. But unfortunately, there has not been any implementation of this mechanism from 2017 to 2018. The last element that we analyzed is actually about assurance and auditing. So this does form part of the safeguards, but of course help with the scope of transparency towards stakeholders that Cobelco stands for. So the audit and supervisory committee of Cobestil consists of 5 members. They also have an accounting external audit in place, but also in this case the system has not undergone any reform after the scandal, and there is no evidence of external auditing conducted on the integrated report. So to have a clear benchmark on which we could rely on to analyze the actual effectiveness of Cobelco's program, we use the elements described by the Ethics Research Center. So they are based on a research conducted on the state of ethics in large companies. And after this research, they convened that successful ethics and compliance.
We still have 2 minutes.
Okay, I'm almost done. No problem. And so they convened that a successful comprehensive ethics and compliance program must include at least those 6 key elements. So written standards of ethical conduct, training of standards, resources that provide advice about ethics issues, a mean to report violation anonymously, performance evaluation of ethical conduct, and the system to discipline violators.
For example,
Cobelco has clear standards of ethical conduct, internal reporting system, and the compliance officer in place, while we are still missing performance evaluation and ethical conduct trainings, and also a clear system to discipline violators.
this is an important point.
In this specific case, Belco committed only superficially to the restoration of its core values. They mentioned ethics and transparency several times, but even after the misconduct, they did not implement quantifiable measure aimed at preventing some future mislead. So Covelco had better to focus on ways to check on its employees' understanding, while just without only listing them. So they really need some program that can check the effectiveness of the program. Also, the second thing is that from a non-critical eye, Covelco could seem a company with a strong corporate governance in place. Despite that, it does not have any tool to accurately measure it. So here you can find some suggestion of the indexes that we could use to actually analyze it. And the third and last conclusion is that the COBE's corporate code of ethics and also the following standard section has never been upgraded, so this leads to obsolescence. Okay, those are the references we used for our presentation. I hope everything is clear, and thank you for your attention.
For example, for the top 90% or for the bottom 10% in order to see the different results when a variable is relatively low and the variable is relatively high. Quantile regression does not partition data.
They are all connected from all. Okay.
But with
technologies.
Good afternoon, Professor. Could you enable me to share the screen, please?
Yes, of course.
Now, let me show you how we can run quantile regression for your project. So you need to go to model, and then you need to go to robust regression, and then you have to choose.
Hi, Carmen. Now you are co-speaker, so you can.
Okay.
You are in charge.
Okay. I hope you can see our presentation on the screen.
One moment.
Okay.
At the moment, not. Yes, none. Okay, so I switch off my microphone.
Perfect. Is it a full screen, Professor?
Here, I would need to get rid of the dummies.
Okay.
Okay, and I need CO2 emissions per capita.
Right. It's a full screen.
Okay, and here we have the desired quantiles.
I'm going to start about SNAM. SNAM is an energy company founded in 1941 in Sandata, Mayonnaise, that operates in the construction of pipelines and gas distribution as of date.
It's a good idea to compute confidence intervals. Here,
and Europe for gas storage, transportation, and also regasification. Following Europe's commitment to reaching net zero emissions, SNAM is a member of the Clean Hydrogen Alliance, which aims at the transportation of entirely decarbonized gas, hydrogen, and biomethane. Moreover, in 2019, SNAM was already the first European energy company to inject a mix of 5% of hydrogen and natural gas into its transmission network. Since 2011, SNAM has taken actions to sustainability following the shared value approach proposed by Michael Porter and Mark Kramer, seeking to generate value and build relationships with both financial and non-financial stakeholders. This paper seeks to analyze SNAM's integrated reports of 2019 and 2020 to identify the evolution and change in the company's approach to value creation for stakeholders using the IR framework. Particularly, the research focuses on the materiality matrix and seeks to consider the change between the pre-pandemic and pandemic years. Furthermore, in 2021, SNAM's integrated report was awarded the so-called Oscar di Bilancio, the Italian Oscar of financial statements, where it was lauded for the clear, readable, and reflecting the most innovative standards of reporting with reference to both financial and non-financial aspects. The primary focus of the analysis is the materiality matrix of corporate social responsibility. This approach provides evidence of what is important to stakeholders and promotes meaningful corporate disclosure or central to the global reporting initiative. This is a key topic that defines the prioritization of issues and strategic planning that forms the sustainability efforts and reporting by the company. SNAM's organizational performance can be better understood by comparing the company's efforts in 2019 and 2020.
I'm going to save it.
Method.
So
SNAM uses peer analysis in the creation of materiality analysis within the sustainability reports. It's done by reaching stakeholders through interviews with the management, conducting survey questionnaires, and also materiality workshops that involve representatives from customers, supplier, and employees. This methodology evaluates which issues are material or significant to an industry overall and to specific business. Through this process, management prioritizes and disclosure policies are set. Now I want to give speech to my groupmate, John, please.
You have to go
Your
to
microphone.
graphs.
Yes. When we conducted a content analysis of both the sustainability reports from 2019 and 2020, we noted that SNAM uses various analyzing approaches to build a comprehensive report. As you can see them listed here, I would like to highlight particularly the benchmark analysis used in 2019, in which SNAM would compare with other companies a set number of standards to analyze performance and make improvements to the performances. In 2020, another interesting aspect of risk analysis can be used, which is particularly important due to the pandemic. SNAM analyzes and assesses which are the factors that could in the future negatively affect its sector. So we wanted to show this in addition to our content analysis. We decided to focus on the materiality matrix that SNAM uses to identify the important elements. As you can see, climate change is important to both SNAM and its stakeholders, so is health and safety in 2019. However, factors like brand reputation are only important to the company, but not as relevant to the stakeholders. We found it interesting to note how the company acknowledges the stakeholders in putting parameters like climate change and health and safety, but it also includes parameters relevant to the company itself, such as brand reputation and relationships with the authorities. In construction and distribution businesses, the relationships with the authorities prove to be particularly important. The matrix was pretty similar also in 2020. However, health and safety increased in importance, of course, due to the pandemic. Climate change also was significant because, as expected, as the research suggested that carbon dioxide emissions would be reduced due to the post-pandemic and ongoing pandemic results, but it wasn't so due to the economic activity being started out at the later half of 2020. The firm decided to put brand reputation out of this materiality matrix, which is interesting to note how the company decided to honor the stakeholders instead, since it had already been having ongoing procedures to establish brand reputation in the previous years. Another thing that SNAM does, it changes the format of the sustainability reports. For example, in 2020, decided to communicate way more about its participation in global climate change initiatives and also in its commitment to go zero carbon by 2030.
And then I will choose annual,
we found out in our conclusions, we conducted a parallel analysis with a similar company, Enel. As most of you would know, Enel is a large distributor of gas and electricity in Italy. As it is similar to SNAM in many ways, we found out that the materiality matrix was very similar in both the companies with regards to climate change and health and safety. but SNAM decides to focus more on health and safety and gives relevance to more present factors. It is interesting to note how similar companies have similar matrices. So how is it that EU law affects the disclosure? How about if all the companies decide to disclose very similar information? We found out that there could be improvement in third-party interventions of analyzing the factors of materiality matrices in both the companies, and we concluded that similar companies have similar importance and significance levels. And with this, we come to the conclusion of our research. Here are the references that we have used. And thank you for your attention. If any questions, we would be happy to answer.
I get different
Can I see the other guys that were in your group? I think we are all connected from home. Oh, hello.
Okay.
Nice.
Tell me what you want me to repeat.
Hello. Good morning.
Sorry, Professor.
For spoken
distance between the dotted points, I mean the blue line and the black line. I didn't get it right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. The blue line is.
And Professor, there is Anar. I don't think maybe he's having some technical problems.
So what you would get.
Okay, that's right. Okay, just to see who were, you know, the people of the group. Okay, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Anar will turn on camera in 1 minute.
So the blue line is from the oilers. Now the black line is represents the coefficient from the quantum regression.
So I would say that the unit for today is over. It was a pleasure to have you as guests. And now we are going to see
poor country should have relatively low
only on the 4th of April, okay?
How does GDP per capita affect CO2 emissions?
So I will see you in about 2 weeks, okay?
This coefficient tells exactly what it is. So this number
bye guys at home.
000
Thank you, bye.
998
Bye, thank you.
La mattina?
Sì, scusi, la mattina qui ero un pochino agitata e me lo sono scordata. Arrivederci.
The next coefficient is for the next quantile, 25%. So we are looking at the 25% of the lowest CO2 emissions per capita. This is graphically this point. Okay, then we have the median. This is the median response. The median is this point. Okay, we are looking at the 75% cases of the highest CO2 emissions. This number here in the graph is this point here. And the top 95, so when CO2 emissions are relatively high, it's this point here. The blue line is the simple regression we have run earlier. So the blue line is this value here, is the blue line. So we are comparing OLS, which assumes a symmetric response, the average response, compared to quantile regression that is basically looking at different segments of the distribution. Or quantile regression is looking at different segments of the distribution. You want to repeat that, or you think we're okay?
No, it's fine, thank you. Just one last comment. As the black line is very close to the blue one, can we, I mean, what kind of interpretation can we give?
Very good, very good question. As I said earlier, as the blue line is very close to the black line, it seems like the average response is a good approximation of what is happening in the different segments of the distribution. So the average response is a good approximation of what is happening when CO2 emissions are relatively low. The average response is a good approximation of what is happening when CO2 emissions are relatively high. Now, this is not always the case. This is the case in this specific example. Okay, the important thing you need to remember, please make a note of this, is that the blue line is the average response that assumes symmetry. The black line is an asymmetric response, so you have different responses depending where you are, and assumes asymmetry. So the blue line says whatever CO2 emissions is, the response to GDP per capita is just one number. Which number is that? This blue line. Quantile regression says no, the response of CO2 emissions to changes in GDP is a function of whether CO2 emissions are relatively high or CO2 emissions are relatively low. So quantile regression tells us when CO2 emissions are relatively low, the response is different to the case when CO2 emissions are relatively high. In this specific example, we see that the blue and the black line are very close. So the degree of asymmetry in this case is limited. The degree of asymmetry in this case is limited. Was this okay?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And really the last one. So can we say that from this in this situation we have a few outliers, or is maybe too much? I don't know.
Now, that's a very good question. When you are using quantile regression, like here, you don't need to worry about outliers too much. You need to worry about outliers when you're using least squares. Okay? Because quantile is looking at the different segments of the distribution, they can basically take into account outliers in a more efficient way, because the outlier would affect more what is happening, on what is happening on the specific segment. Okay, so as I said on the notes earlier, when you are using quantile regression, you need to worry less about outliers. So let me rephrase it. Do you need dummy variables for outliers in quantile regression? The answer is no. Okay, very good questions. Who was this?
Thank you. It's Theodore.
Theodore, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I got your email. I'm going to reply earlier. Okay.
Sure, no problem at all. Thank you.
Okay, very good questions. Do you have one more question, please? Because I think your questions have helped a lot of people.
I'm done. Thanks with the question. Thank you.
One more. Can you ask one more thing? Something that you want me to repeat?
For the moment, I'm fine. But if something comes to my mind, for sure, I will drop a question in the chat. Thank you.
Please ask. Okay, so let me recap. So you have the project. The project is here. Okay, you can start with the data and the results, regression results. So the regression, you need the linear model, the non-linear model. The non-linear model is the one with the squared. You have the logarithmic model, and you have the quantile regression. So we have done everything so far except the first differences. Okay. What do you want me to repeat? Do you want me to repeat something about the project? I can see people have chosen countries so far. Just make sure that you have a lot of observations. I can see 152. This is fine. Please write the number of observations that you have in the model. Do you have any questions about the project? Do you have any questions?
Sorry, I have a question about the project and observations. Are about 70 observations enough?
70 observations should be relatively okay. Yes, the lower limit, but yes, they are okay.
Okay.
Are there any limitations of pages for the project? Reza is asking. No, there are no limitations. In fact, as I say on the end of the project, the emphasis is on tables, on graphs, etc. So try to include as many figures, as many graphs as possible to improve the quality of your project. So there are no limitations. There are no limitations to the number of pages. Okay. Other questions? Do you want to repeat something? Do you want to repeat something? Any questions? Anything you want to repeat? Anything you want to repeat? So if there are no questions, I think we should meet tomorrow then. Have some rest and then we can meet tomorrow. Okay. So have some rest, good night, and then we're going to talk tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye to everybody. Bye-bye to
Thank you.
everybody. Thank you very much.
Bye, thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.